The Lord give it to me to deal with false.
There was something wrong with that scene. Something odd. I can't pin it down, but I have a definite feeling that something didn't fit.
Well, think about it. Try to isolate it.
I've tried. I can't pin it down.
Had a hard day at the office, dear?
No. No, I just witnessed an attempted homicide. Was given the third degree by the police. Had my passport confiscated, so now we can't leave. And, just now I had my head nearly decapitated by a meat cleaver. I can hear him saying it now. Go to Italy. It's a peaceful country. Nothing ever happens there.
Bring in the perverts. Now, look at them carefully and see if you recognize anyone. The murderer could have gone back to the gallery that night to see if Mrs. Ranieri was dead. And we can't rule out the possibility that he is a pervert.
You can't. He's in jail. Or at least he wasn't a month ago.
Great.
Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson.
Hi people, this is Giovanni Lombardo Radice from Stage Fright, and you are listening to the Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to the Hysteria Continues and this very special, extra special 10th anniversary episode. It's part of our double ender, isn't it? I think we have a clip show, which I don't know, Joseph, which is coming out first? They're all coming out together.
Well, the clip show went out today on Patreon, but this episode with the clip show will premiere on the same day on podcatchers.
Excellent. Okay. So, yes, we are back, and this is episode 228. And for 10th anniversary show, we thought we better go for a big one. So we are grappling with Dario Argento's The Bird with the Crystal Plumage from 1970. The giallo that started it all in the early 70s. It wasn't the first giallo by any stretch, but certainly it was the first giallo that kickstarted the boom of the early 1970s. So we're looking forward to talking about that a little bit later. But 10 years, guys. Wow. So we started this back in 2011. And if you listen to the clip show, we've got some of the highlights and arguably lowlights of the last 10 years. Everything from the Skype apocalypse to the drunk casts to the voices of angels us singing. So, Erik, did you ever think we'd make it 10 years?
Didn't think we'd make it 10 minutes.
Seeing as we are, we're scholars of giallo, as many people have said. So I didn't want to bring it down to the level, but I thought Erik would enjoy the...
You can't.
So... So Susie Kendall, which might make an appearance throughout the show. Who knows?
Kent.
So, Joseph, did you ever expect us to make it 10 years?
No, I figured we'd do 10 episodes and then there'd be some podcast CEO who thought we were so bad that we'd owe him 10 years.
Or we'd get 10 years.
Yeah, something like that.
I thought we'd be picked up by a major network by this stage, like Wayne's World.
I know. Well, you never know. It might happen. And of course, Nathan, you joined us, didn't you, on the third episode? And again, on the clip show, we have some clips from the very first episode, which is Happy Birthday to Me. And Nathan, you joined on, it's April Fool's Day, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was Joseph's first pick.
Ah, okay. And you came on as a guest, and we loved you so much. We invited you to stay, and you've been here ever since. Oh,
that's wonderful.
It is. So I've only got one thing left to say to you, Nathan.
You can't.
So,
it's time.
As we mean to
Justin,
go on.
Have you not ever heard you don't play around?
Yeah, you shouldn't play around.
Yes, well, we mean, as we started, as we mean to go on. 10 years of the same jokes, the same shtick, just different films each time. So you either love us or you hate us. But if you're listening to this, I think hopefully you are part of the former. So, well, before we get on to the big bird with the crystal plumage, in time-honoured tradition, let's have a quick chat about what we've been watching recently. So, Erik, have you seen anything you want to tell us?
I haven't seen anything, but I do like the idea of Big Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which is kind of a Sesame Street Giallo mashup.
Wow, that would be good. Let's copyright that. I don't know. Probably Jim Henson's studios probably wouldn't be that keen on it, but
Probably not.
wasn't there that Melissa McCarthy?
Oh yeah, it was supposed to be awful. It was directed by Jim Henson's son. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't good. And this is actually coming from somebody who's a fan of hers. But the movie itself is just so not funny.
Was it the Happy Land Murders?
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
I've not seen it, but I saw it pop up on something recently just to remind me, because obviously there was also Meet the Feebles, wasn't there, which was the kind of the puppet. But yeah, well, no worries, Erik. I know we've got a lot on. In fact, we're recording a commentary later for a film we can't mention, but another teaser for yet another commentary coming out later this year. So we've been busy beavering away watching those. But Nathan, how about you? Have you watched anything?
I did watch one movie that I've seen before. It's been a really long time, though, and I caught up with it again. It's called Five Across the Eyes. It was filmed in Morristown, Tennessee, which is actually pretty close to where Joseph and I live. It's not too far away at all. And I think it was actually where they filmed Evil Dead, if I'm remembering correctly. But it's about these 5 girls who are returned home from a like football game, and they basically take some wrong turns. Stripes, go. She's knocking stuff off the desk.
Well, it is the 10th anniversary. You can let her have a, party in the background, can't you?
You can't.
But anyway, yeah, so they stop at this like gas station, and they have a little fender bender with this vehicle that turns out to be driven by a completely psychotic woman who torments them for the rest of the night.
Susie.
Oh,
She's
Erik.
got black hair. Unfortunately, I think the movie was too low budget to completely work.
Even for you. Wow, it must be made for tuppence.
No, I was trying to think of the positives and the negatives, and one of the negatives is that the sound is very muffled and the girls talk over each other a lot. It's like when you feel like they weren't given a script, they were just given a general idea and they ad-libbed it.
So you mean a bit like this podcast?
Yeah, well, we don't really have a script. I don't. I mean, until I'm reading the back of the video box, though.
Well, exactly. Unscripted.
Do you not get the script that Justin sends out every week, no?
Oh, no, I just toss it and do my own thing.
I'm sure you do, you dirty little boy.
How dare you, Erik? But, yeah, the performances, I mean, they range from grating to actually a lot of fun. One major plus for this movie is the woman who's playing the psycho is doing the whole wide-eyed and just completely going off the rails, ridiculous. She reminded me of Brenda in Urban Legend. So I mean, yeah, it's not. I don't dislike it, but it would be tough to recommend it because, unfortunately, the low budget does cause issues because it's shot at night. The lighting's not good. You can barely see it. And the camera never leaves the van that the girls are in. So no matter what's happening, the camera always is in the van. So in one scene, they're out of gas and they take off running and the psycho chases them. But the camera stays in the van the whole time.
Wow, that's experimental.
Yeah. I mean, it was certainly different, but... Yeah, and like I've always said before, if you have made a movie, then I think you deserve props for that, no matter if people love it or hate it. I didn't hate this movie at all. I actually felt like I think if they had had a bigger budget, I think it could have been really great, especially with the woman playing the psycho, which ironically, I looked it up. This is her only film credit, but she does such a good job because... I mean, she reminds me of the classic actor Nathan Johnson in Old Federal Massacre 2.
You shouldn't play around. Yeah.
Which I should mention we do have on a T-shirt, so you should head to Redbubble and pick one of those up.
Wes ordered a magnet of that, and it's on the back of his vehicle. Y'all's turn. Goodness. Anyway, yeah, so it's called Five Across the Eyes, and...
when was it from?
It came out in 2006.
2006. Okay, so quite a long time ago. Was it 15 years ago?
Oh God, that makes me feel old, Justin.
You are old, Nathan.
I'm young at heart.
Exactly. You're not as old as the rest of us. So.
Well, that's very true.
Well, not you, Methuselah.
We'll gloss over that, shall we? So, but just also to mention, I'm not sure if we mentioned in the last episode, but I don't think we probably did because we've had a little bit of a break for Christmas holidays. Is that it has been announced that we've done, talking of commentaries, we've done commentary tracks for 88 Films' upcoming trilogy box set of the Urban Legends films for the first two Urban Legend and Urban Legends Final Cut.
Yeah, you weren't paying attention because that was my recently seen last episode.
It was. We did mention it in the last episode.
We did. Okay. So anyway,
Justin.
In Justin's defense, we talk about a lot of stuff.
We do.
And a lot of it is rubbish, so yeah.
All right, Eric, it's you and me against Justin and Nathan again.
All right, yeah. Twisted Hysteria.
Yeah, how dare you defend his honor?
So, which...
get me knighted. Okay?
Nathan, which song are we singing later live?
Let's see.
This one.
Animal. Cannibal.
That's me and you.
Yeah, true.
Because when we're moonlighting from our separate musical groups, we're singing possibly in Michigan tunes.
We're called the Possibly in Michigans.
Justin, we're going to sing, I can't remember the name of the song. I am the sun, I'm the air. You know what I'm talking about?
The Smiths.
You're talking about How Soon Is Now?
Yeah.
You know something very cool? I thought that song came out in the 90s, and I found out recently it came out way earlier than that.
1984.
Whoa, way earlier. Cool, totally.
Yeah, it feels like a late 90s, early 2000s song. So I'm like, wow, they were so ahead of their time.
Why?
Well, just to put your mind at rest, we probably won't be singing later, but unfortunately, probably this isn't a drunk cast. At least I'm not drinking.
I'm not drinking. It's 8:19 a.m.
I have a G&T.
No judgments here. Do you, Erik?
Yes.
Oh, no judgment. Lush.
Hey!
Joseph, how about you? What have you been watching?
Well, the only thing I've had a chance to watch this week, and it was only because I was having back problems at the time and I couldn't do much else but lay in bed, was the, and this isn't even a horror film, but it was the third season of Cobra Kai, which is a show I enjoy a lot, but this season really felt like they were kind of treading water. And I find the stuff with the adults, the core characters from the original Karate Kid films, I find them like much more interesting and engaging than the stuff with the teens in the show. And I think that's a big problem because the stuff with the adults is thoughtful and it ties back perfectly with the old stuff that we love. But the plot with the teens feels like a completely different show. I mean, it's this sort of Looney Tunes cartoon shenanigans where teenagers are constantly engaged in these super unrealistic fight scenes and no one ever gets in trouble. No one ever gets hurt. I mean, I don't think there's a single episode without so much as a pratfall, if not a slap in the face or a punch in the eye. And it grows very tiresome very fast. The original Karate Kid films, I think they had, they of course had fights, but I think they spent more time lamenting how fighting is not the answer, and so the violence here feels almost fetishistic and over the top, and it just feels out of place. That being said, this season had some excellent callbacks to the first two Karate Kid films and sets up returning characters from that ridiculously bad third film for possibly the fourth season. I don't know.
Like Karate Kid 3.
Oh, yeah, that's what I said. It's ridiculously bad. I love it. It's
true. That's good.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite of the series because it's just so awful. But, like I was saying, it took about 7 or 8 episodes for them to not tread water and to get to the interesting stuff. So I was a little underwhelmed with this season. Probably the weakest of the 3 so far. But it does have the best overall episode of the series. So it's not a total loss. Any of you guys watch this show?
I've seen the first 2 seasons. Like you, I find the grown-ups more interesting than the teens, and I like the comedy elements more than I like the sort of serious message parts of the series. I like in the first 2 seasons where Johnny is trying to come to terms with modern technology. I thought those kind of scenes were funny. The problem for me with Cobra Kai is that what I love about the Karate Kid is that there's clear lines between the good guys and the bad guys, and you can really root for Danny LaRusso and his friends and boo the Cobra Kai people. But in this one, they try to create shades of grey, which is all very grown up and honourable and stuff, but I prefer my bad guys to be bad and to get their comeuppance, and for the good guys to be really good and triumph at the end, which I don't get in Cobra Kai.
Well, you get some of that in this third season. There's some.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's not heavy on it, but the obvious bad people get what's coming to them finally. There's a couple of good scenes that
like that one with that guy with the mohawk, the teen with the mohawk. He really gets on my tits.
Yeah, he gets his what's coming to him in this season.
Good. So I might watch it. So yeah.
Oh, I like him.
Yeah,
what? He's a bully. He's like Justin doing karate.
No, it's because he I think he's a fascinating character because he has turned all that energy from when he got bullied and he's become what he hates the most. So I think he's got a lot of growing to do.
Yeah, Justin, you hear that?
Well, I wouldn't know because I haven't watched the show.
Yeah, well, you've got a lot of growing to do.
Well,
from what Stuart tells us.
He's a grower, not a shower.
I'm not going to dignify that with an answer, but yeah, I haven't seen Cobra Kai. Anyway,
I liked season 3. Actually, I've loved all of it. Honestly, I mean, I probably like it more than Erik and Joseph do. I love that there's gray areas for everybody. Like everyone kind of has their own like demons. Like in season 3. Kreese, I mean, he's obviously one of the main like villains of season 3, and we get insight into his backstory. But to me, it doesn't make him not a villain. It's just kind of showing like why he's become the way he is, and I kind of like stuff like that. I agree with you that the adult stuff is more entertaining than the stuff with the teens, but I like the teen stuff too. I can't lie. I just find it so ridiculously entertaining, and I love that they're just 30 minutes each. It's it's definitely not one of those shit, because one of the problems I have with a lot of shows is when they are an hour, and sometimes I'm watching them and I'm like, you are really stretching stuff to last an hour.
American Horror Story.
And I'm like 30 minutes I think would be, I mean, some shows need an hour, I understand that, but I mean, just some shows I think could be 30 minutes long and be really good. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for tuning in to the Cobra Kai podcast.
Yes, talk about going off piste.
Yeah, well, that's the only thing I had to watch.
Well,
this
that's
week.
fair enough. But anything else, Joseph?
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, I watched a couple of things, a couple of newer films. One was called Synchronic from 2019, and I wasn't sure if it was going to be a horror movie or what it was going to be, but it's kind of the basic premise is two paramedics in New Orleans are going out answering calls of drug overdoses and finding people either dead or very close to death with like stab wounds and snake bites and all sorts of weird things, and it's because a new designer drug is on the market. And the upshot, which is it's explained very quickly, so it's not really giving anything away, is that the designer drug interrupts time, and when people take the drug, they go back to the very space where they took the drug back at some point in the distant past. And then they come back when the drug wears off. They come back to the future, and so if they come a cropper in the distant past with various animals or people want to do them harm, then that they bring that back with them, those injuries. So it's these two paramedics trying to work out what's going on. I quite enjoyed it. It's kind of more of a kind of sci-fi movie. I was thinking it's something Erik probably would enjoy.
Ooh, it does sound good. I like the premise.
Yes, I thought when I was watching, I thought, oh, this is one Erik would probably quite enjoy. So I think it's probably one of those films that was, again, because of the last year's pandemic, has probably sort of kind of got sucked into the black hole of video on demand and things like that, and never really got a fair shot at going anywhere. But it's got Jamie Dornan in it and Anthony Mackie as the two paramedics. So, but I enjoyed it. It's got good production values, and yeah, I thought it was pretty decent. So that might be worth a watch. The other one I saw was Spree from last year, which featured Joe Keery, who was in Stranger Things. And this was a kind of, I kind of guess, I've seen it being called kind of American, what's American Psycho for the kind of 21st century. And the basic premise again is this: Joe Keery plays this social media obsessed loner who makes YouTube videos and content, social media streaming content that nobody watches, and he's been doing that ever since he was a kid. And he works for this kind of this taxi service, a bit like Uber, called Spree.
It kind of sounds like my life, because I'm sitting here making all this stuff that no one watches.
Well, I think some people are watching it, but or listening, hopefully, especially on our 10th birthday. But he comes up with the idea that he's going to live stream a murder spree in his car. So almost everyone he picks up, he kills, and he's rigged up his car full of cameras to record it all. And the joke kind of is that even though he's going around killing all these people in Los Angeles, no one's watching. So he's trying to go viral, but he's finding it really difficult. He keeps on trying to get more and more outrageous. So it's kind of very kind of jet black comedy. Not entirely successful, but I had fun with it. So if you've enjoyed those kind of social media horror movies of the last sort of 10 years or so, then you could do worse than this. It's kind of it's never boring, but as you can imagine, it gets quite frenetic and kind of over the top towards the end. So any of you guys seen it or heard of it?
No, but it sounds pretty interesting. I'm actually more interested in that Synchronic that you were talking about. What year did that come out?
It's 2019.
Okay. But Spree sounds good too.
Yeah.
Where did you rent that Blu-ray from, Justin?
I didn't rent it. I got it on the Amazon had it on the Amazon ES.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I guess we should move on to the main attraction, shouldn't we?
What, me?
No, but you could go and fix yourself another drink, Erik.
An American expatriate in Rome witnesses an attempted murder that is connected to an ongoing killing spree in the city and conducts his own investigation, despite himself and his girlfriend being targeted by the killer. That was on IMDb. It was a pretty quick, description there. But this is one of the first giallos that I ever saw, and I absolutely love it. I always find, like I've said a million times before, the killers in these giallo movies to be extremely scary. Like the scene where the killer is menacing Susie Kendall, like in her apartment, and the killer's outside the door. Like, I think that's a really frightening moment. It's pretty scary. And I was also thinking, don't you mess with Susie, okay?
Justin, you probably approve of that statement.
What's that?
Don't mess with Susie.
Exactly. I very much appreciate that sentiment.
Very good. Thank you. I love the mystery aspect. I will be the first to say I did not guess this correctly at all. I was absolutely kind of dumbstruck when I figured out what was really going on in this movie. Although I shouldn't have been in hindsight, maybe. But no, I'm bad at guessing these, so it is what it is. But no, I love the performances. I love the music. I mean, it's the killer again. The killer's very scary. The whole black gloves. The killer's outfits in these giallos is also very creepy to me. And I think one reason with giallos that, might have turned me off in the beginning is that they do focus on police procedural parts of it a bit, but it didn't really bother me in this movie. In all honesty, I don't know. I was pretty engaged with it from beginning to end. I wanted to know more about what happened when, this woman, Monica, was getting attacked. And so, yeah, it's a good movie. It's a great intro, I think, for anybody that hasn't seen a giallo, because it was my introduction, and I thought it was fantastic. And like I said, the twist ending is phenomenal. It's probably one of my favorites, if I'm honest. I like it that much. So I guess I won't spoil it yet until we get your guys' thoughts on it. So let's start with Joseph. What do you think of the bird with the crystal plumage?
Yeah, I'm ashamed to admit that I had only seen the bird with the crystal plumage once, and this was almost 30 years ago on some ratty VHS tape. So going into the film for our Big 1-0 was interesting because essentially I felt like I was watching a brand new movie almost. As the film went on, I did remember vague pieces here and there. But on this go-around, I absolutely loved the film. And, I'll treasure this viewing experience for a lifetime because, Argento, he knows how to utilize a tracking shot. And make no mistake, the bird with the crystal plumage is full of them. But they're not really self-indulgent. They serve a purpose. The opening scene with this beautiful woman walking the streets of Rome, and she's wearing this bright red dress or a coat of some sort. and we get these occasional flashes of as if she's being photographed from afar. And then they juxtapose this with a scene of our killer suiting up, and the killer is retrieving a cache of knives from a bright red case. I mean, it's just so well done. And then later, when Tony Musante, is that how you pronounce his name? I'm assuming. When his character's walking through the foggy streets after he's been interrogated, we get this attack out of nowhere, and the killer flees into the night beneath this thick shroud of fog. I mean, these scenes say something, and it's not just characters walking through doorways. It's. I love how he implements the story into the tracking shot. Sam Raimi knows this trick very well, and so does Argento. Tony Musante, he's likable as the hero. Obviously, I think he speaks at least some phonetic English, though I'm quite sure the DVD copy I watched was dubbed. He's sort of the prototype of the typical Argento hero. He's the right guy, the wrong place at the wrong time. And I like how he isn't inflicted with a hero complex. He just sort of resigns himself to get to the bottom of things because he feels obligated, being a witness, until, later he just kind of has this moral obligation to see it through. So there's a weariness to his performance that's pretty interesting. The flashbacks they use here, they have this real eeriness to them. I mean, we start to see bigger pieces of the puzzle begin to unravel, and it has this like chilling jolt on the soundtrack, and it's very well done. On the flip side, there are a few scenes of unintentional hilarity I caught this time around. One such scene being the lineup scene at the police station, and they bring in this transvestite character, and the inspector yells out, "How many times do I have to tell you? Ursula Andress belongs with the transvestites, not the perverts." And the Andress character, in quotations, says, "Oh, I should hope so." I mean, it's just so 1970, and you wouldn't get away with that in movies today. And later, the owner of the, I guess it was an antique shop or the art gallery, but they're talking about a murder victim, and he says, "I heard she likes women, but I couldn't care less. I'm no racist." I mean, what? Racist? I mean, it's just a lot of hooey there. But gorgeous cinematography here. I mean, that scene with a woman being followed back to her house in the middle of the night is it's straight up Halloween, to the point that even the music feels like it would belong in John Carpenter's film. I'm pretty convinced this is probably an influence on Halloween, that scene at least. But bottom line, it's just a very striking film. The entire movie is just very striking. It's got a great mystery with a satisfying conclusion, although like I said earlier, as I was going through the movie, I started remembering, little bits and pieces, and unfortunately, the identity of the murderer was one, so it was no surprise. But overall, this is just an all-around winner, and I think it's a fantastic pick for the Big 1-0. So yeah, thumbs way up for me for The Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
I felt so bad for the killer, honestly. Erik, what's your thoughts?
Because the killer had friends and loved ones.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I just felt bad for what, the killer's motive for all this,
Well, I love Bird with the Crystal Plumage as well, because just Argento's Giallo, he seems to center around that, quote, sort of missing clue element that I love. I mean, he does it to perfection in Deep Red, I think, but here we can see its origins with the misreading of the fight at the top of the staircase in that art gallery. As Joseph was saying, the film really looks slick and polished. I was watching the Arrow Blu-ray, and it's the widescreen photography is just so amazing, and it feels really cinematic, which is a far cry from the straight-to-video look of a lot of his later work. Argento's films like The Card Player or Dracula 3D, which, despite being 3D, looks really flat and drab. Films like that, and The Third Mother. But this film feels really cinematic, and it's quite low budget from what I was reading into the background, so it's amazing how well it looks. Lots of the Argento trademarks are here in his debut: tracking shots, acrobatic camera work, including that POV shot of a man jumping out a window, or falling out of a window, I should say. Although it does seem to bounce when it gets to the pavement as if it's on a bungee cord, which it probably is. There's a lot of coincidence and contrivance to the plot, like jumping to the correct conclusion that the the painting that was sold to that woman in the antique shop has something to do with the murders. I mean, it's not an obvious, avenue to start investigating, but conveniently it is the one they start investigating in this. I thought that gay character who runs the antique shop was incredibly 70s and so stereotypical of apparently Italian comedies were sort of wall to wall with these kind of really, really overtly camp men in them. I liked the jailed pimp as well, who has, I suppose, some form of Tourette's where he says so long all the time and making people think he's finished his sentence but when he hasn't. I thought there's a really quirky character in it who's the artist who painted the painting that's at the center of the mystery, and he's kind of like a caveman who lives in this really old barn that only has an entrance sort of 3 floors up or so, and he likes to eat cats, which he's just such a... I was wondering if Argento was having a dig at the world of art and the artist or something, because he sort of paints this character as being so out there and so horrible. And I love when I watched this film for the first time, there's an assassin in it who runs around in a bright yellow jacket, and I was thinking, if you were an assassin, you'd surely wear something dark so you sort of blend in with the night. But then it turns out that there's a plot contrivance where he runs into a hotel, the assassin, and Tony Musante's character follows him in, only to find himself in a room full of men in yellow jackets and blue hats. And I always thought that was a plot contrivance, but actually it turns out that it was a deliberate move on the assassin's part. But I thought it would have been wonderful if it hadn't been, and it had been kind of an urban legend style plot contrivance where it just so happens that there was a convention of men dressed identically to the assassin so that he can get lost in the crowd. I love the razor attack, which reminded me very much of something very similar in Dressed to Kill, wondering if De Palma had seen this film. Also, as Nathan was saying, that scene where Susie Kendall is being menaced in the apartment where the killer's trying to break down the door, although she does become a typical damsel in distress because it just reaches a point where she just lies down on the floor and starts crying and waiting to be killed until she's rescued by her hunky husband. I do like the killer's reveal at the end. Just like Nathan said, I wouldn't have predicted it watching this. I mean, obviously I knew rewatching it this year, but back in the day I would never have guessed the killer's identity. I mean, it has kind of a double twist ending, which is kind of reminiscent of, I think, Terrorized or Night School. Doesn't that do something similar? So the film, the film has a real energy to it that I found was lacking in maybe some of the giallo previous to this, things like The Evil Eye and even Blood and Black Lace, which is a bit more leisurely. This one feels quite modern, even sort of 52 years later, and it's a breezy 96 minutes. But if I had to pick, I would say I much prefer Deep Red. It's in its original cut, which is 2 hours. It just feels meatier, and the mystery feels more sort of densely plotted, and I don't know, I just love Deep Red a lot more, and I love the sort of missing clue element of that, which I keep going on about, I know. And it also has inventive Friday the 13th style kills, which you don't really get in this film. It's just sort of, a black glove killer with a knife in this. But I do think it's a really, really accomplished film. Hard to believe it was his debut feature, having never done any film directing in his life before, not even shorts, didn't have a Super 8 camera as a kid. This was his very first attempt at making a film, and I think he did a rather smashing job. So yeah, thumbs up for me as well, Nathan.
Very good. Justin?
Yes, well, just to echo what everyone else has said, it's a film that I very much enjoy. It's kind of almost like watching it now, and having watched so many gialli over the years from the films where kind of it subsequently came from, and saw where they kind of stole bits from this movie. It was so kind of influential. But it's funny, it kind of comes out so fully formed, as Erik was saying, that Argento hadn't made any movies before, although he was a film critic, so he certainly was well versed in film, and also was obviously well versed in the gialli of Mario Bava and Umberto Lenzi. But it said previous to this, although I would say that Blood and Black Lace and The Girl Who Knew Too Much had a kind of similar kind of killer on the loose, whereas the Umberto Lenzi ones, which were very much the kind of the playboy trying to drive Carol Baker mad, Jean Sorel, or those kind of movies, are very kind of different in a lot of ways. So this kind of film it does feel modern, and I think, I mean, we talk about the background. I mean, it certainly it was intended to be that way. It was kind of like really the birth of not a new genre, but kind of the rebirth of the giallo through Dario Argento's eyes. So I mean, all the way through it, I mean, I from the opening sequences with like the fetishistic touches that Argento's so well known for, and like the killer poring over his or hers kind of arsenal of knives and choosing which ones, and the fetishistic black leather gloves. But one of the things I think does get overlooked with a lot of Argento's work is that kind of sense of humour that it actually kind of intercuts into a lot of his movies. It's clearly is like a crowd-pleasing thing, and it feels like, to me, as much as I love The Bird with Crystal Plumage, the subsequent two gialli that followed was probably lesser. I think it's fair to say most people think they were still enjoyable, but that Argento kind of really honed his art with Deep Red, which arguably, it did come out when 1975, really at the tail end, the very tail end of the giallo boom. But yeah, I love all this, the touches of humour and the absurdity in there, which he kind of uses in a way that I'm kind of assuming as a kind of, to sort of relax the audience and, as a kind of crowd pleasing sort of elements. I mean, he has kind of gay characters in a lot of his movies. Deep Red and the Cat o' Nine Tails. He kind of, he actually, I think he once said he wanted to do or he had even written, or he wanted to do a giallo which only had gay characters. So I think he's kind of very gay friendly, and I think he's kind of misunderstood in a lot of ways that a lot of the misogyny and stuff was thrown at him, and in real life he's kind of like a peace-loving vegetarian. But yeah, this movie is great. I like Susie Kendall. I do think it's a shame that she does kind of fall into this kind of cliche of this kind of simpering woman on the floor, and especially in all the killer can only do is really kind of start whittling her door and making a very small hole. It would take him or her probably about a fortnight to whittle their way through that door anyway, so she doesn't actually have that much to worry about. I did wonder if she's kind of she was dubbed in this, because when I've heard her in other films, she's got a bit of a Cockney accent in this. She's a bit like, all right, governor, gall blimey type accent in this, which doesn't really sort of suit her character necessarily. Tony Musante, I think it was, he was, the archetypical like Argento protagonist, as I think, Joseph was saying, but he is very likable in this, and he kind of carries it through, with aplomb. So I mean, the other thing that I think Erik was talking about this being like feeling like a modern film. And the other thing, and you see it in quite a few other gialli, and like the Queen in Red Kills 7 Times, and quite a lot, and his own films as well. This kind of fascination with science and the modern. So in this, it's stuff that looks very antiquated to us now, but to audiences in 1970 would have looked like Tomorrow's World, with all these kind of the police procedural things of being able to, have this kind of, to us looks quite laughable now, but this kind of print out, or this kind of, dot by dot kind of torso, this human figure that comes out of this ticker tape machine, this computer, which doesn't look like anyone at all, but it kind of, it has that kind of fascination with the future, and how the killer is going to be caught in the modern world, which I think is really kind of interesting. It looks amazing, and the Ennio Morricone score is beautiful. I mean, he has that whole duality of that kind of thing where you've got the music, where you have the breathy female vocals, kind of the loungy score, which kind of I adore those kind of giallo, the Morricone and Bruno Nicolai scores from the early 70s gialli, and then all that kind of discordant jazz for the kind of real kind of fingernails down chalkboard kind of discordant jazz for the kind of the more the suspense sequences. And also agree very much with like Joseph about the again watching this and some of the scenes, I was thinking right out of Halloween. And I think I'm trying to remember if John Carpenter actually acknowledged that Dario Argento was an influence, because obviously Halloween was only released 8 years after this was made, and this movie was quite a big success in the United States as well when it was released in 1971. So I'm sure Carpenter would have seen this. So Halloween is very much a sum of its parts. It's kind of very much kind of borrowing off Black Christmas and the Dario Argento thrillers and some of the other giallo thrillers of the early 1970s. So, but yeah, overall, I mean, it's astonishing for a debut by a director who'd never, as Erik said, picked up a Super 8 or even made a short film before. Although, I mean, we look into the background, it was interesting. I was reading stuff about how Argento said that, he was really flying by the seat of his pants through much of this. And he said quite a few elements in this that people took to be stylized filmmaking were mistakes on his end. But overall, it's such a wonderful template for the kind of ridiculousness, the inglorious ridiculousness that was to come from plot-wise into the early 1970s. And I mean, we haven't spoiled it, but obviously we do spoil the endings. And I was going to say obviously the whole beginning sequence in the gallery, and the film was called The Gallery Murders when it was released in the United Kingdom at the cinema, but is that set piece with this modern art and the killer, what look we think is the killer in the typical fedora and black clothes, which of course was something that was taken from Blood and Black Lace, and fighting with this woman in this art gallery. And obviously Tony Mazzanti sees it in the beginning, and Argento said that he was amazed how well it worked by having the killer in white, who was the woman, struggling with the man in black who was the victim. So just that visual trickery of the black and white makes you immediately presume that the woman, because she's in white, is the victim, and also presumably because she was a woman as well. And so having that kind of going on is just very, very clever, and it works very, very well. So obviously going forward is the clever, and something else that went through from many of the gialli going forward is this kind of, I saw something, I'm not quite sure what it was, there's a piece of the clue that I haven't quite worked out, it'll come back to me, which goes right through Argento's gialli movies of the latter years, and obviously a lot of his the people that followed in his wake. But in this is you're made to think, you think that the killer is actually the victim, and it turns out that it's her husband who's been trying to grapple with her, and in the end you got this kind of wonderful contrivance again, like Erik was saying, that kind of all hinges on this painting, which in the end we find out she'd suffered some traumatic incident, and when she's seen the painting, I think I'm right in thinking, if I remember correctly, she's seen the painting and someone being murdered in the painting, and rather than identifying with the victim, she identified with the killer, which set her on this killing spree. And then her husband joined in as well, just as you do, because couples should do things together.
He was trying to protect her so she wouldn't be caught.
Yes, but presumably at the beginning when she was trying to kill him in the art gallery, that should have set off alarm bells. But again, this is the thing with the giallo, is you have to, suspend disbelief, because they're also taking a lot from, I know Nathan's favourite genre of film or type of film is the crimi.
Oh, he loves them. You can't keep him away from them.
I know.
But they had those kind of very over-the-top ridiculous notions and kind of, crazy killers in skull masks and dressed as frogs and all sorts of things, and sort of very over-the-top. And the giallo kind of took on that, because obviously they also... this was kind of sold in West Germany as a Edgar Wallace adaptation, which of course the crimi were all Edgar Wallace adaptations. But sorry, I'm going to background. But just to say, no, I love this movie. I think it's amazing that it came out so fully formed, and Argento actually had this vision of a modern thriller for the times, which again, we get into background, we can still see kind of how that came about. But it's the perfect mixture for me of thriller with comedy elements which don't become annoying. Sometimes you can watch a horror or a thriller movie, and if it's got too many comedy moments in it, can throw you off. But this, everything just moves along at such a clip, and with the thriller elements and the kind of the bizarre kind of over the top kind of weird kind of off kilter comedy moments, it just works so well. I'm glad we finally got around to this one.
I agree, very much so. I love the scene where the woman, I can't remember her name. I'm awful about names, but she's lying in bed smoking a cigarette, and the camera kind of follows the cigarette as she's dumping her ash. And when it pans back, the killer's in her doorway.
Great scene, that one. I forgot to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great moment. And I also thought the killer was really smart at the end using that giant sculpture. I'm like, that was actually pretty brilliant.
Yeah, the giant sculpture reminded me of Phoebe Buffay's artwork in Friends because it has like stuff coming out of it.
I'm surprised he didn't get like stabbed with any of that stuff though, or like mortally wounded. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He was very lucky to get away with it. So, well, should we talk about a bit about some background? Nathan, if you started, do you want to take us through some?
Yeah. Hang on just a second.
Said with confidence.
Yeah, I got to pull up my notes here. You know, it's going to take me just a minute because there's so many of them. Tony Musante was a very intense actor, and it's alleged he would frequently show up at Dario Argento's apartment at 3 a.m. to discuss characterization, much to Argento's annoyance. But you know what? That could be the hallmark of a good actor. The Hornatus nivalis bird species doesn't actually exist. The one seen in the film is played by a gray-crowned crane. Ooh, I love cranes. I think they were such a cool bird.
Okay, Ralph Wiggum.
Yeah, you're totally Ralph Wiggum.
Well, they are. The script was written in 5 days. And there are... oh, man, I didn't know that. Eva Renzi considered the participation in this movie as career suicide. Eva, you did so good in it.
Are we to believe you're reading this background information for the first time?
No. No. Not at all. It was shot in 6 weeks. And yeah, there's just so much, but I don't want to take away from you guys. So who'd like to go next? Joseph, do you have any background?
Unfortunately, my schedule is pretty much a month's worth of our show condensed down into a week, so I was unable to dig up any background information, but I'm sure Justin has more than plenty.
Yeah, that's what I was assuming. Justin?
Well, Eric, do you want to go next? Because I've got quite a lot here. So,
Okay, I've got some. I've taken a lot of this from Alan Jones's book on Argento, which I think is just called Argento. I'm not quite sure. But so he says, Argento said he didn't want to direct the film at first. He'd written the script and had offered it to a producer called Goffredo Lombardo. And Argento insisted that he wanted a modern, fresh, new director to take the reins. But every name that Lombardo suggested was met with derision by Argento, and eventually he nominated himself to direct in the end, even though, as we said, he'd never made a film before, not even shorts, or he didn't make films at school or with a Super 8 camera or anything. He had been a film critic, as Justin was saying.
Hey, Eric,
yeah?
do you mean to tell me Argento had never made a film before?
Yes. It was his last good film.
It was his first only film. Or
Allendale.
Or whatever the joke is. No, I'm just saying that, you know, we can retire the Argento's last film and say Argento had never made a film before.
Yes, that's our new meme. Argento's father, Salvatore Argento, is a producer in the film. It took them 18 months to raise the $500,000 budget. Shooting started on the 25th of August 1969. As Nathan was saying, Tony Musante was described as being quite difficult on set. Argento says he was a narcissist and that he behaved as if he was the only person that mattered on the set of the film, and he sort of blames this incident for his loathing of actors ever since. Argento says something that I'm really happy to see in print, actually. He sort of rejects the over-analysis of his films. He says that people who say the knife is Argento's phallus penetrating the female victims is incorrect. He says, "It's a knife, and I'm filming murders in the most explosively and visually dynamic way that I can. I'm a director, not an analyst." So take that, film students. The producer, Goffredo Lombardo, was not impressed with early footage that he saw that Argento had shot and tried to get him replaced with Ferdinando Baldi. But Argento had a really strong contract that meant he was pretty much safe as houses, so they had to, just keep going forward with the film. The first preview was met with derision by patrons who didn't get the new approach to the thriller genre that Argento was going for. However, the producer's secretary said it was one of the most disturbing films she had ever seen and was haunted by it. And suddenly it began to dawn on them that they may have misjudged the film, and indeed they had, because it became a smash hit around the world. Reggie Nalder, who plays the assassin in the film, the guy in the yellow jacket, he's an Austrian actor, and we would probably know him best as the vampire Barlow in the TV movie, the TV miniseries Salem's Lot. But he was also played another assassin in Hitchcock's 1956 remake of The Man Who Knew Too Much. The film was cut by 20 seconds to receive a US cinema release back in the day, and this was the print that was passed without further cuts for its original UK cinema release as well, which, as Justin said, was titled The Gallery Murders. The film was re-released theatrically in the UK in 1983 under its original title, where the full print was submitted to the BBFC and received 18 seconds of cuts, mainly to, of course, the famous sort of nightdress underwear slashing scene in the film. But the Arrow release from 2011, which I've been watching this week, is fully uncut. And finally, Eva Renzi, who plays Monica in the film, said in an interview that portraying a character who turned out to be a chuckling, crazed murderer was beneath her talent as an actress, which is not very nice to hear.
No.
Yeah, I'm sad to hear that because I thought she was really good in the film, and I think that playing a villain is good for an actor. You know, I think I would like to play a villain because it's so against type, you know, from who I am in real life.
Yeah, like as you proved in Old Federal Massacre 1 and 2.
Yeah, I was about to say, did you play a villain?
Oh, well, yeah, I guess I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is against type.
I want to play a villain that has a good backstory.
Well, you were just in a bad mood because your car broke down in the freeway.
Yeah, that's a good that's a good enough backstory
I guess
for
that
you.
can drive someone to want to kill.
I mean, what else can we say about you that other than you get mad when your car breaks down on the freeway?
What's the difference between the freeway and the highway?
It's the same. Well, highways, they don't have like a lot of exits to other towns. It's mainly just like kind of like back roads through.
There we go. You learn something new every day on the Hysteria Continues.
There's always stuff that pops up in my daily life, and I'm like, wow, I did not know that.
Like plumage. It's the study of plums.
Well, yeah, because I remember when I said it was plumage, but Justin corrected me and said that it was plumage. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's the study of plumes, as far as I know.
Well, I'm glad to see you've been working on your diction.
See, and I said it correctly this whole episode.
Exactly.
Nathan's got a good grip on his diction.
Who is Diction?
Oh dear. Okay. Well, I just got a few little bits just to finish off. Is have you finished before I?
Yeah, it's time.
Thank you. Say the film, we sort of mentioned that Argento very much saw it was time for a kind of modern thriller, and it was kind of shaped in the late 1960s of being a very tumultuous time in Italian politics and social, the lives of Italians. Although I don't think the early 1970s and through the 1970s was much better for Italy in general, but. He sort of said that it was also at the time of the spaghetti western. We see this with like many types of genre films in North America and places. You get one film that hits big, and then you get like a boom, which of course or a cycle, which then kind of runs out of steam after they make too many, or the audiences get weary of them. And so at this point, the spaghetti western was on the decline. So he said that actually, although Erik had said it was pretty low budget relatively, I think it was $500,000. I think was the budget for it. He said that backers were looking for to basically speculate on the next big thing, which of course turned out to be the Giallo. Argento was interesting. I was reading some of the background. I've got the same book as you, the Alan Jones book on Dario Argento, which is very, very good. But he said his interest in macabre was cemented when he was a sickly child. Who was at home and he was reading sort of books from his father's library, which were kind of things like Edgar Allan Poe and things like that. So he was so that's where he kind of got his interest, and also he went to see the 1943 version of Phantom of the Opera with his brother, and he said that these kind of things cemented that kind of interest. In that you mentioned obviously the film originally, it was kind of his film career could have been over before it even started, And you mentioned about the producer hating the film, and apparently the producer Argento jokes with Goffredo Lombardo. He sort of said, "I never hated your film," and apparently had a screaming match at him and his father at the screening, saying, "You ruined us, you cheated me. This is the worst film I've ever seen." And then, of course, it got released to great regard in Italy before it got released to the United States, where it was slightly cut for a GP rating, which is that, what does GP stand for? Is that general participation, or because you presume you don't have GP ratings now in the States, do you?
General public, yeah.
We have G, which is just general.
So I kind of guess it was
is parental guidance.
Yeah, so I guess it's along those lines that it was slightly cut. But it's surprising that you would have necessarily had a film that was seen, even though it's slightly cut, that is seen quite a violent thriller. Although nothing compared to the things that came later on. I mentioned the Morricone score. The vocals he used was a vocalist called Eda Dell'Orso. And apparently at the time, there were kind of new techniques in sound allowed for more atmospheric phonics in film, which were kind of utilised, obviously amazingly by Morricone and a lot of other composers at the time, like Bruno Nicolai. So the film was actually based, Argento said it was loosely based on a book by Frederick Brown, The Screaming Mimi, which was a film that a film adaptation was done, I think, in 1958 with what's her name, Anita Ekberg, in it, about a killer on the loose, which has a fantastic scene at the beginning where I think it's Anita Ekberg is showering by the beach, and a killer who's escaped from the loony bin attacks her in the shower with a knife before being shot by police. Which this is like 2 full years before Hitchcock's Psycho. And talking of Hitchcock, Argento said that the American press especially were calling him the Italian Hitchcock. And he said he was flattered to be compared to Hitchcock, but he said in his own words he's more passionate and hysterical, whilst Hitchcock was more controlled and remote. So although he's flattered, he didn't really see that he wasn't really a Hitchcockian type of filmmaker. So the film, Tony Mazzante, as I mentioned, he was Erik mentioned that he didn't get on with Argento. Argento found him very annoying and said that his kind of method acting was got on his tits, basically. But Tony Mazzante was before this he was better known as playing the villain so it was kind of slightly out of keeping with his normal roles. So that kind of put an interesting spin on it. And lastly, I just kind of wanted to go through a couple of reviews that I got from the release in the 1971 North American release. So the film opened in New York to great reviews. Roger Ebert gave it a good review, and I think the New York Times gave it a good review. So those kind of but the film got some mixed reviews. So just a couple of bits here was like the Evening Sun. Said the bird with the crystal plumage has so many holes it looks like Swiss, if not Italian, German cheese. He's also a little incredulous. Young girls are being slain with irregularity, but that doesn't stop other young and very pretty girls from walking through wooded areas or going up long, spooky stairways after the lights at the upper levels have suddenly and mysteriously gone out. One victim is so foolish, she even lights her way with matches. The hero is rather stupid too, but I suppose people can't be too intelligent in these things, or there'll be nothing to them. The dubbing also works against Crystal Plumage, although Tony Mazzante speaks for himself and Susie Kendall for herself. Others do not, and the results are ludicrous, particularly when the first victim is gasping her way towards the American. But the couple of other bits, the LA Times gave it a very good review. They said, in a dazzling directorial debut, screenwriter, journalist, film critic Dario Argento displays such authority and imagination, he makes the formula seem fresh and thoroughly engrossing. If he means his movie to be some sort of tribute to the Hollywood thriller of the 1940s, he's doing it with a great deal more subtlety and lack of self-consciousness than is usually the case. Anyway, he builds suspense so well that the picture is downright scary. You even forget that it's not very well dubbed. The birds with the crystal plumage also benefits from rich colour set off by strong light and deep shadows, and takes us through parts of Rome and its environments that are way off the tourist track. Usually cast as a psycho himself, e.g. The Instant, and the detective Musanti makes a likable hero, naive but determined. Some of the other reviews I saw, I just kind of just to mention, I won't go through them, but is that some of them said that it was kind of already quite old hat, which is funny, isn't it? I mean, we talked about with other films that we see now that people think these were like the originators of certain moments in the genre history. And I always remember a Variety review of the original Black Christmas from the mid-70s and saying, you know, this is about as cliche as you can get. So even though a film that actually arguably gave birth to the slasher genre, was already seen to be playing with elements that were kind of already beyond cliche. And so Argento was taking the giallo of Mario Bava and Umberto Lenzi, and although he actually said he didn't, it's interesting, he said he didn't actually compare himself to Mario Bava. He compared himself, he said Mario Bava was too baroque for him. He preferred Ricardo Frida as a director. He says more of an influence on him. But yeah, so I mean that's kind of some of the background to show, you know, hopefully if you haven't seen The Bird with Crystal Plumage, then you should go out and seek it as soon as you can, really. And it has got fantastic releases from Arrow in the UK, and I presume it's out on a stellar Blu-ray in the United States, from Screen Factory or something.
I think, yeah, Blue Underground, I think, might have done that.
Overall, I mean, if you haven't seen this movie, you really should, because it's kind of hard to believe that Argento had never picked up a camera. He had never made a movie before.
Where did you read that?
I heard it on some dumb show, actually.
So, okay, right. Well, what was the kind of consensus on the groups?
Well, out of 79 votes, which is a little lower than I expected, 98% enjoyed The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, 2% were neutral, and no one appeared to dislike this film, so that's good. Our 10-year anniversary listener is Tim S. Turner, and he writes, one of the most dynamic debuts from a director, exciting visuals, a fascinating mystery, and great pacing. The Arrow restored Blu-ray is a revelation. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and you can listen on most podcatchers and YouTube, and consider supporting the show via Patreon for as little as $1 per month, or you can purchase some cool swag from our Redbubble shop. Just search The Hysteria Continues. And for feedback purposes, our email address is thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone who's helped to make the show what it is. And I say, if you do get a chance to listen to our clip show, because you can, join us for a trip down memory lane. But one other thing I just wanted to mention, I forgot to mention, was about Susie Kendall, because she was, of course, went on to be in Torso, which is a film we've covered on the podcast, and also Spasmo. But she was also in a film the next year called Assault, which was a British thriller, which had very much it's influenced by the Bird with the Crystal Plumage, about a killer at I think it's at a girls' school. She's an interesting character, because I mean she must be in her 80s now, but she kind of vanished from public life quite a long time ago. But I looked up to see what she was doing now, and didn't find anything. But her last credit was from Barbarian Sound Studio. I think it's 2012. But it just said she was special guest screamer. So I don't know. I'm presuming they just recycled her scream from The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, or I might be wrong. But yeah, she's an actress who just kind of disappeared from film completely in the latter half of the 1970s, which is a shame. But talking of a shame,
It's my joke of the week. It's so bright and fantastic.
What does Barbie do when she gets a divorce? She sues a Ken doll. Also, as a special bonus, I have a second joke. What is a cow's favorite actor? Tony Musanti. Moo. Cow goes moo.
God, your first joke was better, by the way.
Thank you, Erik.
Oh, how can you just look at me like that and laugh at me?
That was definitely a joke fit for a 10th anniversary. I think you've kept an even keel all the way through the last 10 years, and that's to be appreciated.
No dip in quality.
No dip in quality. No, you can't go past rock bottom, can you?
You can't.
So, we've got some feedback, haven't we?
Yep.
And I remembered this time.
Well, do you want to go first, Nathan?
Great podcast, gents. Any idea on when you'll be able to review the 1987 movie Terror Night? The movie is rife with production issues and would be a great movie to explore. Keep up the great work, Brian. And I will say, Brian, that I don't know when, but it is a movie I'd like to cover. So, yeah.
Okay. Well.
Can't say I'm familiar with Terror Night. Is it a Nathan film?
Yes, I would say it's very close to being a Nathan kind of film. So I guess if anybody picked it, it'll probably be me.
Well, it was made, it was a film that wasn't released, or it was lost, wasn't it? I don't know if it was lost, but it didn't get released until relatively recently. It was in 1987, but it was directed by Andrei Titov, who directed House of Wax with Vincent Price, and was the father of the lead in Nightmare Beach. So it was kind of a bit of a lost film. And I haven't seen it for a number of years, but yeah, that'd be a fun one to cover.
So was it made in 1987 or released in 87?
I think it was made in 87, but I don't think it went. Nathan, can you remember it? It was kind of missing in action for years, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. You couldn't find it anywhere. I'd only heard about it. Actually didn't get to see it until some company finally put it out on disc, and I feel like that was way later. So I don't know what kind of release it got in 87, if any.
Okay, well. Who knows? Maybe that will be coming up sooner rather than you think, but we'll see. So, thank you, Nathan. What about you, Erik? What have you got?
I have got one here from our good friend Ara Alishan, and he says, "Hello, gents. I can't recall the last time I wrote in, but you should know that I still listen to every episode, as I have for nearly a decade now. I also continue to enjoy your terrific Patreon feed and the exclusive content and fascinating conversations it's provided. Not too long ago, Joseph mentioned his experiences with sleep paralysis, and this struck a nerve with me, as I suffered from the same phenomenon for years when I was much younger. Unfortunately, my warped mind was unfamiliar with sleep paralysis, and naturally assumed I was the victim of a malevolent supernatural force. Looking back, it did very much feel like there was a presence in the room right before the onset of these attacks. I would wake up in the middle of the night and sense something standing over my head. I couldn't move, of course, so I could never see it, but I sensed it was there in the shadows, and the next thing I knew, I was under some sort of intense distress that I struggle to describe as anything other than an attack. I'm curious if Joseph had similar experiences. Even now, these memories send shivers up my spine. I'm curious why these episodes gradually faded away over the years. Perhaps that malevolent supernatural force pities me now and is being merciful towards an overworked, exhausted father of two. Or maybe he's scared he'll accidentally wake my wife and have to face her wrath. Either way, good riddance. That's enough story time for now. Congratulations on your continued success as podcast hosts and Blu-ray commentators, and long live the Hysteria continues." And that's Ara Alishan. So, Joseph, your experiences with sleep paralysis, which by the sounds of it is something I never want to experience because it would freak me out.
Yeah, I mean, I've pretty much suffered with it since I was a child. It really just kind of boils down to your, to your sleeping habits for the most part, or it could be stress related. For me, it's usually just I'm so hyper aware of it now that I know what it is, so I can just lay there until it passes. But when I was younger, it was always just like seeing things that weren't there. Like I would see weird stuff. Like one time I saw Jimmy Durante in the room. You know who he is? That old time actor with a big nose.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I saw him in the room. He was just staring at me. And I couldn't move, and it was just very freaky. And he was like giggling. He's like,
that is creepy.
Yeah, and you can hear it in your ear. It's like buzzing in your ear. It's very, very disturbing. But nowadays, I just kind of I'm like, okay, I know what this is. I'm just going to close my eyes and just. You can wiggle. Sometimes you can wiggle your toes, and that'll kind of bring you out of it. But yeah, I think it's just mostly just stress and sleep related habits that cause it. Aura. So you don't have anything to worry about with. No.
Every good, like, you don't see, like, Pamela Anderson standing there with her norks out or anything, no?
No, it taps into some sort of a fear thing in your brain. I don't know why, but usually it's usually just weird stuff. Like sometimes you'll see monsters, spiders, demons, and in my case, old actors.
Yeah, because I quite like it if I was sort of half woke up and Kajagoogoo were doing a concert in my room.
I know Joe suffered from it way more than I have because it's only been twice. But the scary one for me was when I woke up and I was on the sofa and I couldn't move and I could hear someone like breaking in the back door of my house, but I couldn't do anything because I was, couldn't move. So that was probably the scariest that I'd ever dealt with sleep paralysis.
I think I've mentioned I've had it a few times, but the worst time for me was when I got ear paralysis and sleep paralysis at the same time, and I was lying there and the TV flicked on, and there's awful sound was coming out of it.
Oh, here we go.
And yeah, I've never been able to listen to it since.
Ha 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 ha! Oh, that's so funny.
Thank you.
It's 10 years on, Justin. Think of a new joke.
So, okay, well, thank you, Aura. Joseph, what have you got for us?
Okay, I got one here. It says, "Hi guys, just listened to your Nightmare Beach episode. I had seen the film a few years ago and thought it was mediocre, but rewatching it again, I really enjoyed it. The perfect combination of bad acting, sleaze, gore, and mullets. Ha ha ha, I see what he did there.
Yeah, who called them merkins? Was it Justin?
Justin.
Yeah.
I might have done.
Yeah, he says, I love the cheese-tastic hair metal soundtrack as well. He goes on to say, shortly after my last email asking about your top 3 non-horror films, I listened to your Cutting Class episode and heard your picks. Some great choices there. My unsolicited top 3 would probably be the Bond film Dr. No, Umberto Lenzi's Italian Polizia film Rome Armed to the Teeth, and Jean-Pierre Melville's Le Cercle Rouge. I'm not very good with French. Le Cercle Rouge? Rouge? Anyway, some runners-up would be... Can you give me some names and pronounce here? Well, I can pronounce this one. Some runners-up would be See, I can't pronounce that one either. Some runners-up would be Penelope Spheeris' Suburbia, the spaghetti westerns Once Upon a Time in the West, and The Great Silence, the late 70s sci-fi film The Black Hole, and Ron Howard's Night Shift. I do like Night Shift.
Black Hole is amazing.
Yeah, Black Hole's good. I like Night Shift as well. Walter Hill's Southern Comfort, which is an awesome movie, by the way, would be at the top of my list as well, but I'm not sure if you would classify that as horror or not. I would... maybe not. It's more deliverancy, but maybe a little more.
It's horrific. The top of Southern Comfort's the top of Justin's drinks list.
He says, lastly, I wanted to congratulate you guys on your 10th anniversary. Though I only started listening to you last year, it was one of the few highlights of 2020, and hopefully you will still be around in 2030, assuming Justin's liver holds out.
How rude. Well, I'm not the one drinking G&T at lunchtime.
Yeah, Eric. You've got
it's
a
just
problem.
a refreshing drink. That's all.
You've got a problem and it needs to be dealt with. I'm calling HR.
HR puffin stuff.
Yeah. He says, he goes on to say, thanks again, Rob Balducci. That's Balducci, not Balducci, Nathan.
Yes, Nathan.
And then he says,
excuse me.
He said, that's what he says, not me. So don't say that to me.
I thought that was Joseph saying it.
No, he says that it's in those little brackets there. He also says, P.S. Nathan, please stop teasing us and pick The Forest already.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. This time the 10th anniversary episode fell on my pick, and we had collectively decided on Bird with the Crystal Plumage. So, that's why I didn't pick it this time around. So there you have it.
Excellent.
Anybody want to talk now?
Yes. Okay, what shall I do? I've got one here, and this is a long one, Erik. About 8 years ago, I bought myself a Vidon box, a little piece of kit based on Android TV, which had the ability to add various different types of plugins into it. Some legit, others not so much. One of these allowed you to search for movies and connect to certain files. I won't mention the name, as to speak it would make the baby Jesus cry, but it rhymes with porrent. And then streamed it directly to the box. Late one night, my girlfriend and I decided to try, for some reason, more obscure titles to see what could be found, and she suggested a movie she remembered from her video store youth, a little movie called Chopping Mall. Within about 30 seconds, a stream had been found, and the movie started, and I was blown away about how enjoyable it was. As my obsessive nature, once we'd watched it, I set about searching for any podcasts which might discuss it, and I found episode 17 of The Hysteria Continues, and from that moment on, I was absolutely hooked. I downloaded and started listening to all your other episodes, and my entry into the world of the slasher movie was truly born. Although I'd been a horror fan all of my life, always heading straight for the usually frustratingly small horror section of the bookstore or library, my exposure to and experience of most of the movies you guys have covered and talk about was limited, but with your podcast acting as a guide and HMV and Amazon fulfilling the role of dealer to my new habit, I spent the intervening years watching as many slashers as I could. With each episode I see and each episode I listen to, my interest in them gets only stronger. As an avid podcast listener going right back to the very dawn of podcasting era, I've seen many a decent show come and go. And then sadly disappear. But I'm so pleased that yours has not only stuck around, but continues to get stronger and stronger with each passing episode. We obviously hasn't heard this one so far. But anyway, there's so many other horror podcasts out there, but Hysteria Continues stands head and shoulders above them all, and it's all down to you guys. Whether it's Justin's encyclopedic knowledge of the genre, which spurs me on to find out more and more, Nathan's ability to find something to love in just about every film you cover, which reminds me to see the positive in everything and to just enjoy it for what it is, Joseph's dry wit and continuing developing technical expertise, he doesn't get enough love for all the effort he puts in behind the scenes, or Erik's warmth, charm, and of course his jokes of the week. You all bring something not only unique to the show, but also essential to the point where there's always to the point where it's always a disappointment when the odd episode comes along in which any of you are missing, and such a relief when it returns to normal. Since I started listening to your show, there have been good times and bad times for me personally, but I've always been able to turn to the Hysteria Continues to brighten my mood, whether it's by listening to the main show, a Patreon episode, or one of your ever-expanding library of commentaries, and I say with certainty that I'm far from the only person who feels this way. It's not just about you guys and the show, but also the community which is built up around it. Whether it's Dave Rindone, the Alishan brothers, Meep, Amanda by Night, or any of the other regulars, listeners, and guests, you've given an awful lot of people somewhere to feel at home in, and for many of us, that's not something we're used to. So I really just want to say that you guys should be very proud of what you have created in Hysteria Continues and the community which surrounds it over the last decade. You've brought comfort and joy to many, many people, and the best thing is to look like you'll be around for a while yet. I, for one, will be along for the ride for as long as the hysteria may continue. Love and soppy kisses to you all, Simon.Logan.
Simon Logan!
He's back! Yay!
Well, thank you for the very kind words, Simon. You know, we're very appreciative of it. I know we're not everyone's cup of tea, and that's fine. But for the people who do enjoy the show, we're very, very pleased that you do enjoy it, because we have fun doing this. And we said a long time ago, when it stops being fun, obviously we didn't say when it stops being funny, because obviously we'd have stopped quite a long time ago with Erik's Jokers a Week. But when it stops being fun, we would stop doing it. But it hasn't stopped being fun, and we still enjoy each other's company. So, and I'm glad there's enough of you out there who enjoy it as well to listen along. So, so without your feedback, it would just be one echo chamber. You know, if there's no one out there to, you know, clap or say anything, it'd be like a toy concert. So we're just glad that, you know, there's enough people out there to enjoy it, that we love the feedback and we love hearing from you, and we're glad we can bring some...
Not as much as we love hearing Toya.
Light, love and joy, and the odd stabbed torso to your lives out there. So, thank you. The Hysteria Continues wouldn't be what it is today, whatever it is today, without support of our listeners and the people who support the Patreon. So, we'd like to say a big thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone.
Yes, thank you. It makes all the effort worthwhile.
Yes.
Very much does. Oh, Joe, I got a question for you, though. This is our 10th anniversary episode. Where's Stella?
She's over there. She's everywhere because, Stefania, she's in every scene of that fucking movie.
I love that. I missed that episode, but yeah, I bring that up all the time.
Oh, were you not on the episode?
I was so disappointed because I love the movie. It's just so ridiculous.
I want that to come out on Blu-ray now.
Well, that isn't it about 4 hours long? I remember it being incredibly long.
It's 2.5, is it, or so? Yeah.
Well, we've got, on the Best of Clip show, we did get requests for that bits from that episode. So there are a few clips from Fatal Frames on there, amongst other things. So,
you know what? Sorry, we're talking about Fatal Frames, and I love that film so much, and I have fond memories of that episode. But I don't think Slaughter Hotel gets enough love for that episode either. That one's as deliriously goofy as Fatal Frames to me. So it's a perfect double bill.
Well, indeed, yes. But you can. That's a good thing as also you can go back and listen to some of our older shows. So hopefully it'll whet your appetite for some of the other things. But now, well, I have I have a quandary now because I did pick. It's my choice next time, and I did sort of had already had something singled out, but I just think it might be fun to cover Terror Night.
Well, there you go. Good idea.
That's out of the blue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you had something totally different in mind first.
I did have something totally, and that will be maybe the next one I'll pick. But yeah, Terror Night. We're talking about, and maybe we can have discussion about some lost slashers as well, films that. But I know we've talked about that before. But yeah, Terror Night would be a fun one to talk about. So so we'll cover that next time on the Hysteria Continues. So is there anything left for us to say?
I think we've plumed everything.
Yes. The bird has no more plumage left.
That's crystal clear.
We've plumed the depths. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Well, we'll catch you next time. And again, thanks for the last 10 years. And as ever, say goodbye to the good people.
Bye, good people.
Bye.